Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. So I'm here with the next part of this College of Policing report. So I want to get through it before the end of the month because for December I've got some things planned. I want to get this over with, and the going through the report is important for the Nicola Bulley report into the investigation into Nicola Bulley, and then this is, as you know, it's always a case that right from the beginning causes so much, I don't know, there's so much toxicity around this case. Even people who are all supposed to care about Nicola and what happened to her get just involved in their own thing. It's very, very strange. But anyway, we're not going to do that. We are only interested in Nicola. What happened to Nicola? We knew the police made a total cock up right from the beginning. And now a lot of it is confirmed in this report, but there are also some interesting things that we did not know. And I'm going to try and pick those out without sort of labouring the point too much about going into too much of this sort of police guff, if you like, of police practices and everything, which are hard to follow for us. And also, I'm picking out the relevant details that I think are the relevant details. But if you want to read the whole report, unedited, if you like, because I suppose in a way I'm sort of editing it, you can find it online and you can read every single word of it, which, just to be warned, it might take you about 5 hours, but you can do it bit by bit. That's why I'm doing it bit by bit, isn't it? Because just to make it a little bit more palatable, a little bit more easy to listen to. And when I have finished doing this, I will put it all in a playlist. And if you're ever bored one day and it's pouring down with rain, and you can just put it on in the background or send you off to sleep or whatever. So today, what we're looking at today, so this is part 8 as far as my sort of narrative is concerned. And we're looking at chapter 4 in the actual document, which is the release of personal information. So this is talking about events leading up to the 15th of February. So following Mr. Ansell's appearance on Channel 5 on the 10th of February, the M&E team's media monitoring services picked up heightened media coverage and social media negativity towards him. This became a concern to the SIO, which they recorded, expressing the risks identified. On the 14th of February, further information was received by the investigation team, suggesting that the events of the 10th of January were known about by some members of the local community and journalists. Mr. Ansell had called 999 on the 10th of January. So this is where it does mention the 10th of January welfare check. I thought it didn't mention it anywhere, but it does. There's a little bit about it. For an ambulance response. So now notice how it says that Mr. Ansell called 999. Now, in the inquest, it was said that Louise had called 999. So we've got a discrepancy straight away there. And as a result, a multi-agency response car had attended the family home. No arrests were made. I just thought it was funny how they said that no arrests were made. Were they expecting to make an arrest then? I thought it was a welfare check. But anyway, no arrests were made and the matter was resolved. Now, they don't mention that the following day, poor Nikki was at A&E with a head injury that she told her friends she'd slipped on water from the dog's bowl. We have no webcam, do we? No body cam from that day, because apparently the police officer forgot to put the body cam on. Anyway, As a result, a multi-agency response car had attended the family home. No arrests were made and the matter was resolved. This matter was later referred to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. You know, they say independent, they're not independent. And no action was deemed necessary. A number of journalists made enquiries to the LC-M&E team, asking specifically about the attendance of the multi-agency response car, including an investigative journalist planning to interview Mr. Ansell and Nicola's family friend, who was acting as a community spokesperson. So the only people that interviewed Paul really properly was Dan Walker. And of course, Nicola's family friend who acted as a community spokesperson, that of course was Emma. Mr. Ansell was aware of this, and according to the FLOs, was also aware of commentary regarding this on social media. As a result, Lancashire Constabulary became significantly concerned about the potential impact on Mr. Ansell's safeguarding and welfare. They took the view that a press conference was necessary to provide additional investigative detail about the disappearance and to rectify any misreporting about the attendance of the multi-agency response car. The multi-agency response car. So it's just one car, was it? On the 10th of January to mitigate the risk to Mr. Ansell. Gosh, they were so concerned about Paul. It's a shame that nobody was really concerned about Nikki's welfare. There was a previous opportunity by Lancashire Constabulary to highlight the high-risk grading of Nicola's disappearance with a prepared reactive media line that had been created for the press conference held on the 7th of February. It was not used during the conference and was not proactively uploaded onto the Lancashire Constabulary's website, social media channels, or sent to the press. The prepared media, what's the point in preparing a media line and then not sending it to anybody? And the other thing, the reason why this was so important as well is because originally Sally Riley had said there were no issues. There was nothing, you know, when the press asked, like, is there any reason why, you know, is there anything strange about Nicola's, you know, how she was on that day or before, and Sally Riley categorically said, no, there are no issues that we're aware of or you have to be aware of. Okay, so the media line stated, we have a team of almost 40 detectives working on the inquiry alongside other officers and staff. As with all such inquiries of this nature, we have a senior detective who is leading the investigation. This is normal practice when there is a high risk missing from home inquiry. Now it's saying missing from home. Anyway. Oh gosh, this case, honestly, I will be glad to get to the bottom of this report, even though I'm welcoming the report and it's very detailed. And it's good to be able to go through it, and that's very wearing. I'm sure you all feel the same way. The previous press briefing had taken place over a week earlier. It was now felt that providing an explanation for why Nicola had been graded as high risk would add the necessary context to the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. This in turn would reduce erroneous speculation around Mr. Ansell and consequently reduce the increasing risk to him. So they were worried about his welfare, you know, were they worried that somebody had people threatened to do something to him? I mean, I don't know of any, well, I don't know don't know if people messaged him directly, said anything, I just don't know. You know, why they would be concerned about his welfare unless they mean his mental health. When queried why high risk, MFH circulated incidents are not routinely described as high risk. When queried why high risk, MAFH circulated incidents are not routinely described as high risk. The Lancashire Constabulary M&E team told the review that only high-risk missing person incidents are circulated by the force on social media. They added that while the actual term high risk is not used, the language chosen always demonstrates the concern for the person's safety. The assumption by Lancashire Constabulary is that the public will recognise these as high risk and that no explicit wording or explanation is required. However, such assumptions are unlikely to be realised. Anyway, conclusions. Not declaring that Nicola was high risk publicly at the outset of the investigation with an agreed form of words had a significant impact on how this case was perceived. The narrative from social media commentators and sometimes from family and friends was that something suspicious had occurred. Lancashire Constabulary did not do enough to counter this narrative sufficiently. It's common practice to anticipate questions that may be asked at press conferences. With high-risk MFS cases, it is predictable that questions will be raised as to why a person is deemed high risk. An approach and form of words should be prepared in anticipation. Talking head. The initial decision was for the press conference. Yeah, now this is very interesting, and this is what did make me feel a little bit more sorry for Rebecca Smith. So the initial decision was for the press conference to be conducted by ACC Lawson, Gold, and DCS Pauline Stables, who is a qualified PIP 4 investigator and was assigned to the role. Unfortunately, DCS Stables became unwell and was unable to act as the investigative spokesperson for the planned media conference. Discussions were held between ACC Lawson and DCS Stables as to who the appropriate replacement could be. It was felt by both that it required a senior detective to provide the comprehensive detail of the investigation, dispel myths, and reduce the damage being caused by false narratives. The SIO was nominated as the appropriate replacement. Strong representations were made by the SIO that they should not be expected to take on the role of talking head at the press conference at this stage alongside their role as SIO. So she didn't want to do it. She told them she didn't want to do it. The NCA SIO advisor agreed that the challenge of undertaking both roles was inappropriate in the circumstances. However, the decision by ACC Lawson Gold still stood and the SIO was overruled. So no wonder she was defensive at that press conference, really. She didn't want to be there. He made her be there. She had no choice. So the decision and the rationale behind it is recorded in the PIP 4 decision log by DCS Stables. The SIO was felt to have the necessary knowledge of the detail of the investigation, along with the appropriate level of media training. But the SIO felt that the demands of leading the investigation under intense media scrutiny meant that they should not undertake both roles. They recorded in their daybook notes that they felt vulnerable and exposed by this decision. That day, they raised in the Gold Group meeting that they felt that Elsie had placed them in a vulnerable position. And they certainly, took a lot of stick after it. So she didn't want to be there. She requested not to be there. She was overruled and made to be there. Conclusions. the decision of who should represent the force as a media talking head in very high-profile investigations, especially where there are questions around sensitive aspects of the case, is critical. SIOs have a range of other extensive responsibilities and should not be part of the media response in these circumstances. I did feel sorry for her after reading that, because the thing is, yeah, she'd been the SIO. That's hard enough. It's all going on. It's all chaotic, isn't it? As we've seen from other things. And then they asked her to do that press conference because Pauline was not well. Wonder if that was deliberate. I bet she just thought, I'm not doing it. Let her do it. She had to do it. Rebecca had to do it. And no wonder she came over so uncomfortable, prickly, wasn't she? And it was very unfortunate because she didn't come over well, did she? Vulnerabilities. The SIO was concerned that in the press conference planned for the 15th of Feb, they would be questioned about Nicola's personal issues and the relationship between Nicola and Mr. Ansell. I wonder if she was concerned about that. Anyway, the family liaison officers were deployed to Mr. Ansell on the evening of the 14th of February to discuss the intended press conference. They outlined the risk that Nicola's personal issues could be exposed due to media and social media interest and intrusion. Now, that was nothing to do with social media, because nobody on social media knew about Nikki's issues. That came from somewhere else. I suppose it was social media, yeah, because it was, I think it was Mark Williams Thomas. If he's watching, he can correct me if I'm wrong. But it was said that he'd found out, 'cause he was there by then, sort of fishing around and everything. So what I heard was that they then released that information because somebody else was going to release that information to the press if not. But again, I don't know if that's true. A discussion took place to determine what terminology the family would be content for Lancashire Constabulary to use if asked during the press conference. It is documented that the agreed response would be there are a number of factors in Nicola's medical history which are being considered as part of the investigation. This was relayed by the FLC to the SIO, who agreed with the wording. Okay, so that's what they agreed to say. There are a number of factors in Nicola's medical history which are being considered as part of the investigation. A meeting took place on the morning of 15th of February between the SIO, ACC Lawson, the head of the M&E team, and other senior members of LC's communications team. There followed discussion around the phrasing to be used in the press conference to describe Nicola's personal challenges. Poor Nicola. Poor Nicola. Gosh, when's this woman just gets lost in it all. It was in this meeting that the term vulnerabilities was discussed. It was agreed by all present in the meeting that the SIO would use the phrase specific vulnerabilities and would not expand further on this during the press conference. The change of agreed phrasing from 14th of February with Mr. Ansell, namely the term medical history, to the used phrase of specific vulnerabilities, was not discussed with the family prior to the press conference on the 15th of February. There is no explanation identified for this. So they agreed this change of phrasing from medical history to specific vulnerabilities, but it was not discussed with the family prior to, so with Mr. Ansell, they'd come to the conclusion of saying medical history, and then by the time it got to the press conference, they changed it from medical history to specific vulnerabilities, but there's no reason identified for this. and they did not discuss the change with the family. In preparation for the briefing, consideration was also given to providing a message came through, to providing a police representative with search expertise to support Mr. Lawson and the SIO with search expertise. It was assessed that this was a critical area of police activity and that avoiding media reporting had been created and was being filled outside of policing, notably by Mr. Folding. I remember anytime they mention Peter or criticise Peter in here, it's not me who's saying it, it's the police report that's saying it. A suitable representative from Lancashire Constabulary with the necessary search expertise and media training could not be identified. As a support, the member of the POISA team provided an off-camera briefing at the press conference on the 15th of February. This was a helpful approach. Oh my God, finally something positive. It was only during this press conference on the 15th of February that Nicola was first referred to as high risk. And this was also the first time that her family became aware of the term high risk in relation to her. Goodness me, 15th of February, so that's 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks after she'd gone missing, the first time that they referred to her as high risk, and the first time her family were aware of that. Conclusions. By the 15th of February, it was extremely difficult for Lancashire Constabulary to communicate an appropriate level of information about Nicola's personal circumstances. This was due to insufficient earlier signposting, such as non-reportable briefings and significant levels of public interest in the case. Had the term medical history been maintained, it is likely to have provided LC with a stronger foothold against media inquiries. Yeah, because medical history and factors present an immediate sense of privacy and may have prevented further inquiry. Yeah. Gosh, Nikki was so let down, wasn't she? She's just been let down by everybody. Just the thought of it being me. Well, I suppose if you were the person, you're not in this world anymore, you can't see all this. But, you know, your family having to look at everything that's being said. And the fact now looking at this, that everything was done wrong and the things that Peter's saying, just can't imagine how it makes them feel. The significant amendment to the form of words chosen should have been communicated to Nicola's family prior to use in the media conference. This would have provided them with an opportunity to object, agree, or comment. Those performing the role of talking head and seeking to use the most appropriate and effective words should draw on existing expertise and guidance for support. The NCA provide access to behavioural psychologists who are able to determine the impact of wording on victims, families and the public, and can advise and provide alternatives. Every officer, particularly in specialist roles, should be supported and prepared to speak to the media where appropriate, in line with the College of Policing's Engagement and Communication APP. In this case, where there was difficulty in identifying a specialist with media training, it all comes down to that training again. The National Policing Lead or other force experts could have been considered. Press conference, 15th of February. Lancashire Constabulary held a press conference on Wednesday, the 15th of Feb, at Force Headquarters to update the media. So I'm just making sure this is still showing. Yeah. To update the media. Sorry. with all mainstream media outlets represented. At the conclusion of the press conference, reporters immediately asked for additional information about the vulnerabilities so that they could report appropriately, but at that time the SIO did not reveal any further information. A gold group meeting was convened following the press conference, chaired by Lawson, with reference made to the speculation about the terms used to describe Nicola's vulnerabilities. At least they do use their name in this, which is nice because, if you listen to Peter talking, it's often a target or, sometimes people or, newspapers sometimes or other things they call a, bully instead of Nicola Bulley. And at least they do use a name. I'm just pointing out one thing that's good. The Lancashire Constabulary M&E team had received numerous media inquiries as to what vulnerabilities meant and about the attendance of a multi-agency response car at Nicola and Mr. Ansell's home on the 10th of January. There was recognition in the gold group that Lancashire Constabulary was now in a different position, and discussion took place around what information could be given around the vulnerabilities. A meeting to discuss risk management and the investigation media strategy was set for the following morning. Before this meeting could take place, so they were set to have a meeting about it, and before it could take place at 3 o'clock on the 15th of February, the SIO recorded in their policy book that they had been contacted and advised by the M&E team lead that the word vulnerabilities could wrongly suggest domestic abuse. Goodness me. The SIO also recorded their concern that if the detail about the attendance of a multi-agency response car on the 10th of January became more widely known, the safeguarding risk to Mr. Ansell and his family would increase. Well, why was it not justice? They just did everything wrong, didn't they? Everything. These things, obviously, they're going to leak out. To mitigate further risk to Mr. Ansell and his children. Goodness me. Both the PIP4 DCS stables and the head of the M&E team advised the SIO that a further police statement would need to be released to the media to provide an explanation of the phrase vulnerabilities. The term medical issues was suggested by the SIO, but this was rejected by the PIP4, that's stables, and the head of the M&E team on the grounds that this would give insufficient detail to rebut any adverse comments and to reduce the risk to Mr. Ansell. They're so concerned about the risk to Mr. Ansell. I wish people were so concerned about Nicola sometimes. The head of legal services was contacted to provide legal advice on Lancashire Constabulary's next steps and on the plan to release personal information about Nicola proactively. Lancashire Constabulary determined that personal information about Nicola's struggles would be referenced to explain why the term vulnerabilities had been used. The head of legal services agreed with a senior member of the M&E team that the risks of not releasing the personal information outweighed the risks of doing so. Any press release would need to balance Nicola's privacy rights with Mr. Ansell's safeguarding needs. The decision to make a further press statement was also to ensure that any reporting regarding the attendance of a multi-agency response car on the 10th of January was factually correct and within context, avoiding any further misinformation and speculation about Nicola and Mr. Ansell. Well, that didn't work, did it? And then, of course, then you've got the visit to A&E the next night with a head injury. Do you think they are going to investigate this case again? It all needs. I hope Peter does take his evidence to whoever he says he's going to take it to, and I hope he does, create an independent inquiry into what happened to Nikki. Not about who found her or who didn't find her, because to be honest, she was already gone from this world by then. So as much as it's unpalatable to think of her lying there in the river all that time, it's we just need to know how she ended up in the river. That's been lost as well, I think. The SIO documented that a statement is to be constructed as agreed via the FLOs with the family. The FLOs were tasked with having an immediate discussion with the family, explaining why Lancashire Constabulary felt it important to provide additional information to the media to explain Nicola's vulnerabilities. The FLO deployment was also to ensure that Nicola's parents knew the correct factual detail regarding the attendance of a multi-agency response car on the 10th of January. So I would say from that, what they're saying is Nicola's parents did not know about that 10th of January welfare check or multi-agency response car. They didn't know about it. It is recorded in the SIO's notes that a draft media release was prepared by the M&E team and following input from the SIO was presented to the family for discussion via the FLC and flows. This original draft stated Nicola had suffered with some significant struggles with alcohol brought on by ongoing mental health. Gosh, it makes me so angry. Really, really makes. I'm sort of beyond angry now, though. You just think, where can you look at this case and think Nicola was done justice? At 4:30 p.m. that afternoon, the Flows attended the family address. An explanation was given to the family that there was an imminent threat of publication by national newspapers of stories that would damage the family. They were informed that a further police media release was required that evening to explain the word vulnerabilities. The family was extremely upset about the prospect of releasing private information about Nicola, especially the reference to alcohol. However, they understood the rationale that this further statement was required to limit the imminent prospect of incorrect reporting and the increased risk of harm to the family, in particular Mr. Ansell. Oh gosh. Now, the reference to alcohol. Do you know what this is like? A setup, isn't it? There was no alcohol found in her body anyway. So she had, she hadn't been drinking that morning. I don't believe she had problems with alcohol any more than probably he did, or a lot of people do. They drink. I don't believe that she was a raging alcoholic, or he wouldn't have let her take. Surely wouldn't have let her take the kids off to school, or she was functioning. She had a good job. She was doing well in her job. I do think this is like a bit of a gaslighting thing of her having problems with alcohol and etc. I do, anybody, probably most people, if you looked at their medical records or whatever, there'd be sometimes that they've been to the doctor with a bit of depression, or sometimes more than others, or everyone's got a dependency on. Some people smoke, some people take drugs, some people drink. Everyone's got props. Some people eat chocolate. Some people are addicted to exercise and things. It's still like an addiction, really. Everyone's got a bit of a prop, haven't they? And I don't think Nicola was any different in that, but this was brought up, wasn't it, immediately? Anyway, the family asked for some changes to be made to the statement. replacing the phrase ongoing mental health with ongoing struggles with the menopause. And the statement was duly amended. The flow stated that the choice of word menopause was at the direct request of one family member, but was agreed by all 4 family members present at the meeting. I wonder who that one family member was. The amendments to the draft were made and sent back to the family via the flow for agreement. A text message was received back from the flow to the SIO as okay. The process was conducted under extreme time pressure due to the imminent threat of publication. Publication of what? Anyway, the critical statement did not receive sign-off from the Gold Commander or the head of the M&E team. However, it was released to the media that evening by the M&E team. Following involvement from the PIP Forum with the final family wording sanctioned by the SIO, the response was significant and negative. So it didn't get signed off from the Gold Commander. What the hell is going on there? What the hell is going on? Didn't they agree anything between themselves? Zoe Billingham, the chairwoman of NHS Mental Health Trust, who has previously worked in policing, told BBC News that the update smacked either of panic or perhaps even a deliberate decision on the part of the force to think how they can maintain their reputation. That's quite disturbing on so many fronts. People are rightly asking, how does the reproductive status of a woman who has gone missing relate to the bid to find her? And would that same information be put in the public domain if she was a man? And I really do agree with that. As you know, if it was a man suffering some sort of problems, typical problems that middle-aged men have, maybe erectile dysfunction, maybe some problems with the prostrate, or what sort of things that men suffer from when they're getting older. Would that have been put out in the public domain? And Sarah Vine, a newspaper columnist, wrote in the Daily Mail. Now, Sarah Vine, of course, is Michael Gove's ex-wife. Surely releasing such information will only have added to the feeding frenzy of keyboard sleuths, charlatans and troublemakers, all of whom have been busy circulating bogus theories for clicks. I don't think she's right saying that. I was outraged by that statement when it came out that Nicola's personal details, and I did a couple of videos on the menopause, and we talked about it, didn't we? And it's a natural process that every woman goes through. Now, from the messages that I got, etc., a lot of women did suffer quite badly with it. And, I think it was good because it encouraged discussion, but I still think there was a lot of talk about the menopause at the time. I still think it was something that was sort of jumped on by someone to use as, I just feel that. I don't know. Because I don't think anything came up at the inquest from her doctor about it, did it? So not only is this information completely irrelevant to the investigation, after all, how does telling the general public of any of this increase her chances of being found? Well, exactly. Now poor Nicola is diminished, cast as a cliche, the sad menopausal middle-aged woman who self-medicates with alcohol. It's hard to escape the fact that by revealing her struggles, the police are implying that Nicola Bulley was or is in some way responsible for whatever has happened to her. Oh, victim blaming. At a later meeting regarding the release of personal information, it was documented by the SIO that the press release had occurred during direction from the M&E team. The SIO reiterated that they had wanted to keep the wording to a minimum and had wanted to use the term medical but was told that more information had been needed due to the risk to Mr. Ansell. Gosh, so why, that's it. Nicola's so silent in all this. Nobody was speaking for Nicola and her reputation and her safety, because don't forget, they didn't know she was dead then. They didn't know. She could have been anywhere. And my contention at the time was that if she had just taken herself away for a bit just to get her head straight, if she was watching this on the news, she would go and do herself in then, because it'd be like, oh my God, imagine the whole world knowing your medical history. And I mean the whole world. I mean, there was so much attention from this. 3 members of the constabulary were present in the discussion, and the SIO recorded that the decision to do this had been made by Pit 4, so that's stables. In our view, the decision to release this information was avoidable and unnecessary. So there you go. It was Pauline Stables, apparently. It was her fault. And they're condemning it. Rebecca condemned it. So everyone sort of blaming Rebecca, but it seems from here it was Pauline Stables' decision to release that information. Conclusions. While the decision to release the personal information was lawful, in our view, it was avoidable and unnecessary. Personal medical information can be released if it is important to assist in resolving a situation. For example, if it is known that a person might react in a particular way because of medication. However, unless this type of information has a direct bearing on the case and its resolution, it would be highly unusual for it to be appropriate to disclose. LC should have reasonably anticipated the information regarding Nicola's vulnerabilities could enter the public domain from the outset of the investigation. Regardless of media or family liaison challenges, they should have been better prepared to communicate this information in a more carefully constructed manner. This was a highly emotional and challenging situation, and Nicola's family should have been provided with more time, support, and media expertise to secure their input. Any media statement requested or constructed by the police, wholly or in part, remains the ultimate responsibility of the force. There is wider responsibility from policing to ensure that there are appropriate ethical conditions about the content within those statements, particularly when it includes the most personal information. Forces should be, by default, not release personal information of such a sensitive nature, accepting only the most extreme of circumstances where all ethical perspectives and alternative mitigation have been considered. The decision to release personal information of such a sensitive nature. I'm sorry, I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because all these conclusions and recommendations, they come to the things that they're obvious. It's that bleeding obvious again, stating the bleeding obvious, like Monty Python. Anyway, they should only be made at the most senior level, following consultation with the DPO, SIRO, and or the ICO. Okay, how far am I going here? Okay, I think I will go to the end because it's the end of this chapter as well. Family statement, 16th of February. I'll try and be quick about it and just pick out, but this is all important, to be honest. It's difficult to pick out anything. Anyway, the SIO requested the Flows to go to the family on 16th of February to check their well-being following the release of this statement. And they felt that a statement from the family was required to reinforce the focus into finding Nicola and to reduce the speculation. So in that meeting, an action was raised by the Gold Commander requesting that any media releases constructed that day were to have a final gold sign-off, which had not occurred previously. So a media statement was drafted by the highly experienced Flo using the words that it was felt the family would want to use and sent to Mr. Ansell and the family for input and approval. All 4 Flows attended the family address, and the family were asked to read it and amend it to ensure that they were content. Following some minor changes by each family member, including aspects around the perimenopause and symptoms, the final draft was read a number of times. It was agreed by all family members present these were their words and they were content with them. They appealed in this statement for the speculation to cease and provided their own explanation regarding Nicola's struggles with the menopause. Good God, you'd never think you would have to do that, would you, for your family? You'd never think that. The draft statement was returned by Mr. Ansell via one of the Flows who forwarded it to the others, and the M&E team also sent the final approved version to the Gold Commander and the PIP for authorisation. They confirmed their agreement. The version was passed again to the family for final comment. The contents and wording were again agreed. The family were not under the time pressure that they had been the previous evening. The focus was appropriately on finding Nicola and the challenges experienced by her family. On 17th of February, a Gold Group meeting convened. During the media update, it was decided not to release any further police statements proactively. It's detailed that Lancashire Constabulary would need to weather the storm regarding the release of personal information. So, conclusions. The Gold Group records for the investigation suggests that the first request for gold sign-off on media releases only took place in the Gold Group meeting of 16th of February. Earlier approval of critical media releases by the Gold Commander would have provided stronger oversight and direction and may have prevented the unnecessary release of highly personal information. The critical media release that took place on the evening of the 15th of February should have had the approval and knowledge of the Gold Commander, and it should have been recorded in the minutes of the policy log. Should have, could have, would have, you could have called this report. Okay, then it goes into some legal considerations. So there were concerns raised about the right to a private life, noting that there were potentially significant risks to Mr. Ansell if there was increased speculation about vulnerability. Because all this is when, there was speculation, wasn't there? About it wasn't only because of the wording of the statement. I think it was the welfare check on the 10th that probably caused most of that. It was considered there was a policing purpose for the release of information that Nicola. There was a policing purpose for the release of information that Nicola had struggled with alcohol issues, and that Elsie had responded to a concern for welfare at her home address. So they're saying in collapsing timeframes, Elsie followed the guidance provided. Anyway, I'm going to just go through that a little bit. Let's see. So basically what they're saying is the head of legal services agreed that the risk of not releasing the information outweighed the risk of doing so. So they decided that it was legal and it concurred with legal advice. And then, of course, there was the investigation afterwards into this release. And the ICO recognised that the case was conducted in exceptional circumstances, but did state that the public disclosure of such sensitive personal information seemed extraordinary. Ultimately, the ICO concluded that, having reviewed the circumstances and rationale that led to the disclosure, goodness me, and recognising the likelihood that Nicola was probably deceased at the time of the disclosure, Do you know, I just find that really upsetting. I just find that really upsetting. So, as she was probably already dead when they disclosed it, it was okay. But because they did not know for sure that she was dead, the public interest did not favour the ICO taking further regulatory action. I just found that horrible. But anyway, data protection is a highly specialised area of law that requires support and guidance. Blah, 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 blah. Suggested that the LC would benefit from more informed learning. Yeah. And they advised the college, blah, de, blah, de, blah. Sorry, I can't even read that. Oh, go on, I will, because I'm right here. So the ICO advised the college that during the time-critical incident, where it may not be known if it is a criminal matter, forces should consider the threat and risk factors and use that to assess the necessity and proportionality of any use or disclosure of personal information. Early inclusion of a data protection professional will be key in ensuring that the right people are part of that urgent decision-making process. The decision should be documented with a clear rationale and retained for later scrutiny. These elements were considered by Lancashire Constabulary and their legal team. Okay, so the next thing we'll be looking at in part 10 will be external influences. And you can see it starts off with Paul. But anyway, that's for another time. So I just want to say thank you for listening. I hope you've got something out of it. Takes a lot of digesting, doesn't it? There's still a long way to go. God, I'll be glad to see the back of it, to be honest. I will be glad to see the back of it. What page are we on? So we're on page 99. There's 143 pages, but probably at the bottom there's a lot of appendices. So actually, just let me look. It might not take as long as... Oh, not that many appendices, really. That's all the conclusions, isn't it? Ah, there's some here. Anyway, so hopefully it won't take too long to get through the last sort of 40-odd pages. I certainly will be glad to see the back of it. I'm sure you will as well. But it's been interesting. Maybe that you need to just take a break and then go and look at it a bit later. It's all been so sort of emotional and not horrible. And as I say, can you imagine how that's felt for the family? And that's how it feels for us. So take care. Remember to live, love wisely, carefully. Look after you because you are the most important person. And don't let anyone ruin your sparkle. I will see you really soon in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. Love to all. Bye.